And we are live. Sorry, I've been working with my microphone volume behind the scenes here, but no matter. Um, it's late. I'm tired, so we're just gonna have a fun, relaxed conversation here. But we do have some important things to talk about. Number one, we've got Mazi Smith, who, in his own words, said he didn't do anything in the first preseason game. So we're gonna talk about what exactly that means, how that is related to some of the criticism he's been receiving from the press, from the media, and from fans and content creators. And then we're going to talk about the latest updates on Shedeur Sanders and what that could possibly mean for his future. If you somehow didn't hear about it, Shedeur Sanders has suffered an injury. And it doesn't sound serious, but it is something that apparently they're taking day by day. So we've got two really important storylines to talk about. So if you're in the chat, hit that like button. Feel free to participate. But thanks for joining me tonight. It's been a long week already, and it's only Wednesday.
Queen bitch, supreme bitch, I'ma stay that bitch.
All right. So it is the preseason, but man, these headlines are coming in at a regular season pace. So what we're going to start off with is the conversation about Mazi Smith. Now, if you pay attention to Cowboys content creators on Twitter and whatnot, you know there's been a little bit of a back and forth on Mazi Smith and his performance. And some of it has to do with perspective, just different people seeing different things. Some of it, I think, is people being a little bit dramatic, um, but there has been a lot shared, not only on film because there's watching the game and there's looking at his snaps, obviously, but there's also been a lot said by Mazi himself and also by Matt Eberflus. So one thing I will say before we get into these interviews, these pressers, is that Okoye Media, if you're subscribed to him on YouTube, he did a live earlier. Now, I don't know if it's still posted because the live got shut down twice because he was using footage from games that I guess the powers that be on the copyright side they were not a fan of, and YouTube was like, um, but I did see his stream come back. But what I liked about it was the fact that he shared a lot of information about Mazi Smith and his skill set, and it inspired me. I was already going to talk about what Mazi said in his interview, but what Okoye said inspired me to approach it from a different direction. And the reason why is because one, I want to make it clear that if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen that I was critical of Mazi's performance in the preseason game. Um, but then there were people who chimed in the comments who were like, "It's time for him to go. We need to get rid of him." And I was just like, hold up. I was talking about one game. I wasn't saying like he needs to be gotten rid of. He's a bust. No, I was saying I was very disappointed in that one game. And I was also disappointed within the context of what Matt Eberflus is asking him to do. So I love that Okoye brought the facts. I love that Okoye, presented actual game footage. A lot of it was from last season, though. And so I do think it's worth watching if you're not familiar with Mazi Smith's game at all. If he's just one of those players that you don't watch, because there is a thing called position bias where people just don't watch defensive tackles like that. They're not the stars, they're not the flashy, pretty ones. People like highlight reels, they like things that are easy to track. And unless you make a habit of watching what's happening in the trenches, you probably don't even know what to watch for. Like the average fan does not know what to watch for when it comes to linemen on either side of the ball, right? So if you're not familiar, definitely watch that. It's worth watching. But here's the thing. What they were doing last season was very different than what Mazi Smith is being asked to do this season. And so that's kind of my point. Yes, he was playing high. And yes, he was getting turned to the side a lot. And those are just technique, fundamental things. Um, but also, when it comes to the attack front that Eberflus has talked about, when it comes to being aggressive, shooting the gap, that's the thing that was not happening nearly enough, in my opinion. And I also believe that's what Mazi was referring to when he said he didn't do anything. I think he recognized that he wasn't being aggressive enough. But here's the thing, if you go from what was essentially a read and react style of defense, right? Because you'll hear in this interview where Mazi talks about the difference in how he's expected to approach double teams. And that in and of itself is a big deal. Because if you are having to not only change what you're doing, but also change how you're doing it, even if the expectation is for you to move with more velocity and for you to be more aggressive, you're going to end up kind of stalling if you have to think about that, right? If it's not second nature yet. And I think that's essentially what's happening with Mazi Smith. Um, and that's why I wasn't ready to say he should be traded or that the Cowboys should get rid of him, because I'm like, okay, I didn't like this at all, but there is a long preseason ahead. So, how much better can you get into games? If you watch my live, you'll see that that was one of the questions that came up. um, how much better can you get into more preseason games, especially if you're not getting a lot of snaps? It's really hard to say, but it all really kind of depends on what exactly is the hang up with Mazi. He talks about in this interview the fact that a lot of it is mental, and it's only a 4.5 minute interview. We're going to go through the whole thing, so you'll hear about this. But he talks a lot about, or not a lot, but he talks about how a lot of it is mental, and so that is a thing. But is it mental in the sense that you just need more reps for it to become second nature, or is it literally a comprehension thing? So I want us to take a listen to this, and then we'll talk about it. And then we'll also talk about some of the things that Eberflus said that relate directly to what Mazi is talking about.
Now you have one game, a lot of practice. How you been able to? How's it feel to have? I guess you're a little bit lighter.
Can you ask the question again?
We talk a lot about your weight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And now you've had a preseason game and all these practices.
Uh,
How's it feel to be a little bit lighter and working with that?
I'm up to like 312, 315. You got it's ebbs and flows. Big fella gonna get up to probably 320, 322, probably a little heavy, and then you're gonna get right back down to 313, 312, 315. That's how you find the best weight for you, you know.
Is it hard for people to evaluate your position because a lot of times you get doubled, like what happened on Saturday, and sometimes.
Okay, so he's about to get asked about being doubled. So this is a point that you definitely want to pay attention to if you're one of the people who's been critical of how he approached being double teamed in the game.
You just got to hold a guy up.
No, I'm supposed to split those.
Really, those doubles?
Yeah. They don't care about the doubles no more. Like if I'm getting double, I gotta create my own one-on-one.
That's new from this year, or that's always been for you?
That's a little different for sure. That's a little different, because I'm.
Okay, so I appreciate that he clarified this, because this is one of the things that I did not realize was different this year compared to last year. Um, so one of the things that Okoye brought up a lot whenever he was doing his film study of Mazi last season was how Mazi approached double teams. And the fact that a lot of times when he was holding up the blocks, he was doing his job. Definitely true for last season, 100%. But he's saying, okay, that's different. And I think when he says that they don't care about double teams, obviously they care about double teams. There's a certain way that they're going to want you to approach that situation because it's a thing that's going to happen. Um, when he says when he says they don't care about double teams, I think what he means is they're not asking for him to be responsible for both guys. And he says they want him to create his own one-on-ones. And essentially what he's saying is that they want him to, and I apologize, something's going on with the sound in my ear, so I don't know if it's also going on your end. But essentially what they're saying is that they want him to split that. um and so if that is the expectation and he's still holding up the blocks like he was last season, then that means he's not executing it the way that it needs to be executed. And so that's why if you look at what he's doing compared to what some of the other guys are doing on the line, that's why it might look a little off. And so yes, if you look at footage from last year and you might be like, oh yeah, this worked out, and the way that he did this thing allowed the linebackers to do XYZ, and you could be absolutely right about last season. But when it comes to this season, and we're going to listen to what Eberflus says about it. But Eberflus is looking for penetration. He's looking for guys to play on the other side of the line of scrimmage. And I'm going to go back so we can hear this quote one more time. But yeah, they're approaching that differently, and I think that's something that you have to look for, because regardless of how effective it was last season, if it's not what you're supposed to be doing this season, then it's going to be an issue. And I know that raises some questions about the adjustment and how that might impact what he contributes and the value of his contribution, and he's going to get to that in a second. But let me go back a few seconds and then we'll listen to more of the interview.
You know, and then you're gonna get right back down to 313, 312, 315. You know, that's how you find the best weight for you. You know.
Is it hard for people to evaluate your position, because a lot of times you get doubled, like what happened on Saturday, and sometimes you just got to hold a guy up for the
No,
line.
I'm supposed to split those.
Really, those doubles?
Yeah. They don't care about the doubles no more. Like if I'm getting double, I gotta create my own one-on-one.
That's new from this year, or that's always been for you?
That's a little different for sure. That's a little different, you know, because I'm strong enough to you know take on a double team and not
Yes.
create my own one-on-one. You know, we got a couple of guys in this system that ain't 315, ain't 310, ain't 305. Watching them boys get off and create their one-on-ones, I get to learn from them boys a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it's good to see them do that. I can implement it in my game. You know what I mean, just grow as a player.
I think you have
So what he just said told me two things. So, or maybe more than two things, honestly. So the first thing, just to reiterate, he's like, okay, we're supposed to split that. I'm supposed to create my own one-on-one, right? But then he goes on to say, watching some of these guys and the way that they approach it, I get to learn something. So, one, that tells me that he's still learning about how to approach this the way that Eberflus wants it done, right? And then he says that's something I can implement in my game. So, what we're also learning is that he recognizes the need to implement it in his own game. And so I'm pointing that out because, like, well, yes, some of the criticism has been very extreme. There are some people who are not saying that Mazi is a bust. They're simply saying his first preseason game was disappointing and they need to see him perform better, right? And so here he is basically confirming that, basically saying, like, yeah, there's some things I still need to learn. There's some things that I still need to implement, which completely makes sense because he's got yet another defensive coordinator who's asking him to approach the game in a different way. So I'm not even saying that that's a knock on him, the fact that he needs to learn, the fact that he has things to implement. Um, but what I am saying is that when it comes to him being evaluated by the coaches and by, fans and content creators who want to criticize him, that is something that you have to consider as you're watching him. That's something that's expected to be implemented. And as much as we may want him to do well, and as much as we may value things like him holding up blocks, that doesn't fit what he's being asked to do. So we can't just be like, oh no, that's a good thing because last season it worked out. Like, no, it's not working out this season. That's not what we need him to do. We need him to do something different. And while it sucks for Mazi, the fact that, and they'll talk about this in this interview as well, the fact that he's gone through so many defensive coordinators, um, it sucks that he keeps having to make adjustments year after year. Um, but it's also just facts. So let's keep going.
grown as a player from the first day you got here to where we are right now?
It's all up here. That's all. I think physically, man, I'm physically dominant. You can tell that by looking at me. But in terms of putting my game on the field and all my traits on the field, it's all up here.
What's the process been like for you going from college to when you're in the pros? Every year you're getting a new defensive coordinator. It seems like that.
Oh man, I done had like 6 coordinators now. I'm chilling. Yeah, it's
Okay, so he says he's had like 6 coordinators, right? And then he's like, I'm chilling. Now, I'm chilling can mean a couple of things. And in this sense, I think I'm chilling means he's not anxious about it. He's not stressed. He's accepted the fact that once again, he's got to deal with another coordinator. He's got to deal with uh, another mindset, another philosophy when it comes to the defense, and he's got to adjust. He's used to having to adjust. But the fact of the matter is, some of these skills take time to adopt, not only from a physical standpoint and the number of reps that it takes to get good at them, but also from a mental standpoint. Like I just mentioned a second ago, one of the things that you want, and this is as an athlete in any sport, you want to get to the point where the essentials become second nature. If the essentials and the fundamentals are constantly changing, it's so much harder for them to become second nature. So while I appreciate the fact that he doesn't seem stressed and he's like, I'm chilling, it's like that's going to affect you. It's going to affect your development, which is going to affect your performance. That's just facts. And so like it's in his case, it's better for him not to think about it and just focus on doing better. But the fact of the matter is, and once again, this is important for everybody who's criticizing Mazi, it's going to affect your performance. And so that's why I'm like, I don't think of him as a bad athlete. I don't think of him as a bad player. I think of him as a guy with potential who unfortunately has had a lot of things affect his development, including the fact that he keeps having to adjust and change over and over and over again. And yeah, Chris, good to see you in the chat, by the way. I did see parts of Okoye's live. I was kind of in and out. But that's one of the things that I was mentioning a few minutes ago was the fact that um, Okoye presented a lot of good information about what Mazi did last season, but a lot of the good things that he did last season don't apply to what is needed this season, especially when it comes to the need for um, just penetration, shooting the gap, so on and so forth. And Eberflus talks about that a lot, which we're going to get to. But things like holding up two blockers, that was one of the things that Okoye pointed out multiple times. And last season, that was really good. That was what he was expected to do, and he got pretty good at it, right? But this season, he just said a second ago, they don't even want him to do that. They want him to do something different. And that different thing was something that he was not executing during this first preseason game. So we're talking about an attack front style. And even Eberflus acknowledged, like, yes, he's never done this. So the defense that they had last year, it was more of a read and react type of situation. Um, and so while you always want your linemen to be aggressive in some sense, what they were asked to do was definitely more. It involved more evaluation of the situation. Um, so while it was very physical, it wasn't as aggressive. They weren't expected to um, attack with the same velocity, if that makes sense. Because read and react it, and not to say that it's supposed to be slow. See, this is one of the times where I wish I was like a film person because I could just like bring up clips and be like, "This is read and react, and this is an attack front." Google it. If you're not familiar, Google it. But just know, especially and Eberflus will talk about it, but it involves a lot more velocity, a lot more penetration. The phrase "playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage" is something that you're going to hear a lot. But one thing that he already brought up is the issue of holding up two blockers when he's being double teamed versus splitting them, creating his own one on one, and getting past him. Um, and so that's kind of what he's talking about right here is when he's like, yeah, I'm strong enough to hold up two blockers. He is. He did it. Okoye showed the film on it. That's something he can do. He even did it a couple of times in the preseason game, right? But the problem is what you need to do is split those blockers. And so he's talking about learning about that from other guys and the fact that he's still implementing that in his game.
It's all good. They all good people. They all want to win. I want to win. I'm just trying to remain on this winning team, and keep on doing my part to the best of my ability.
Has that been a surprise to you at all in your football career? Because I guess when you come up through high school and that, you're probably thinking I'm going to have the same coaches for several years, and then now all of a sudden it's like every year is new.
Coach Greg Madison, he was my first D-line coach, but he wasn't ever really my D-line coach. He just was the guy who recruited me to Michigan. I mean, recruiting, you build a relationship with the people that recruit you and stuff. As soon as I got to campus, he left. So he had to give me a call, tell me, you're going to be a great player. I had to go do what's best for me and my family. You're going to know the feeling one day. You know what I'm saying?
Has it been hard because you've had different coordinators and line coaches, and they all have different things they want to teach you?
Yeah, it's not hard, bro. It's just everybody sees things a little differently. you gotta get. It's my job to get on the same page with each and every person that comes in this building. It's just that.
So this is another instance of him being like incredibly lax about something that's definitely impacting his development and performance. And he doesn't have to say it. I've worked with way too many athletes. I've heard way too many stories to believe that somehow that is not affecting his development and performance. Like I said, it's his job to be chill about it. And what he said is exactly right. His job is to get on the same page with them. But what he said right before that about the fact that everybody sees things a little bit differently, that is going to affect what you're going to be asked to do, which means it affects the way that you're practicing. It affects the feedback that you're getting, which means it affects how you adjust, which is inevitably going to affect how you develop as a player. I mean, the reason why he's got guys on his team right now that even though he is a first round draft pick and he still has to learn how to do what's expected of him this season from other guys, from watching other guys and seeing what they do, picking up tips and implementing it into his game. So, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? Like, yeah, he's a really good player. He was a first round draft pick for a reason, but there's still some things that he has to learn. And it's because shit keeps changing. So this is probably one of the main reasons why, even though I was like, nah, I did not like what I saw in that preseason game. I'm still not team trade Mazi. I'm not team get rid of Mazi. I am team I need to see if Mazi can adjust yet again, if he can contribute in this style of a defense. Um, I am team I need to see more. I'm team I currently don't trust him to do what's being asked to do of him, if I'm being honest. Asked of him, sorry, it's that fucking echo. One of these days. I currently don't trust him to do what's being asked of him. Um, but I mean, Eberflus seems to have faith in him, or at least he's saying that in his pressers. So I'm just like, yo, you're the coach. You see him every day. You work with him every day. So if you say you trust him to be an attack front guy, then by all means, I'm gonna trust you on that. But I still need to see it at some point. Otherwise, it just ends up being you saying the right thing during a press conference when in the back of your mind, you know this guy is not the guy. You know this guy is not going to be able to contribute to the defense. So if he's not telling us the truth, hopefully he's telling the truth to somebody, because like it really doesn't serve anybody to pretend like Mazi is able to do something that he's not able to do. Somebody's going to have to adjust. Either Mazi is going to have to figure out how to fit into this system, or Eberflus is going to have to be a genius of a defensive coordinator and figure out how to use him, because Mozzie's not going anywhere, regardless of all the people who are like team trade Mozzie, get rid of him. Mozzie's not going anywhere. That's not happening right now. So they're going to have to figure out how to make this work. Right now, Mozzie seems committed to learning how to participate in an attack front. Eberflus says he can do it, so let's see it. That's all I'm saying. I need to see it. He's gonna have to show me.
So,
What are you trying to get out of the last two preseason games?
just keep getting better. The first one I wasn't happy with at all, to be honest. I didn't do anything, but keep learning the scheme, keep getting off the ball, and not worry about anything. That's gonna make everything better.
Was that something you noticed in film, maybe, or like during the game?
Now, one thing I will say, and a few people have brought up the fact that he got a couple of pressures. So when he says he didn't do anything, I feel like he actually can build off of what he did in that preseason game, especially the couple of times that he got pressures. Um, and then there were a couple of snaps where all he needs to do is adjust his path a little bit. And that's easy to say from looking at it. You know, when you have the option to slow down a play and look at it over and over again, it's easy to be like, oh, well, all he had to do with this. In the game, I'm sure the game is moving a lot faster. And that's something else that's a really good point about this situation, because one thing that they talk about with players in their development is like, oh, the game slows down for them. That's when players start getting really good. That's when they make a leap, is when the game slows down. Well, you know what can prevent a game from slowing down or make it speed back up again is when you have to learn and relearn your position over and over again, because the philosophy and the style keeps changing. Um, So when people talk about the game slowing down for a player, what they're essentially talking about is them getting so used to something that they no longer have to think about it as much. Because the more you have to think about what you're doing, the more you're going to stall, the slower you're going to react. Um, which is why, even though he is strong, even though he is physically dominant, he's going to have trouble if he's having to adjust so much. And if this doesn't become second nature for him, right? Um, so yeah, let's go ahead and keep going.
You're like, oh man, I maybe I'm not having my best game.
I mean, you ain't never going. I just didn't do anything. You know, like you got to do something. I'm a first round pick. It's expectations, all that. This is my third year.
Yeah. How do you block out that noise regarding that when people expect more out of you because you're
The only people that should be expecting anything out of me is our fan base and the people in this building. You know, if you ain't that, I ain't trying to hear it. And even a lot of people, on social media, I really ain't trying to hear it.
Is it easy to block out?
Yeah. You just did. Social media ain't for that. For me personally, shouldn't be for nobody in the football game of football. They be talking crazy about everybody.
So I definitely appreciate that. That's the third time in a 4.5 minute interview, not even 4.5 minutes, that he's basically shrugging off a lot of things that could stress him out if he were to let it. But that's the bulk of him talking about the defense. And I do like that he's tuning out social media, but there are some reasonable people on social media who are saying the same things about his game that he's saying about himself, is that he doesn't look comfortable in Eberflus's defense. He's not contributing what he needs to contribute right now in Eberflus's defense. He is a good athlete. Like Chris is pointing out in the comments, Okoye showed us that Mazi Smith is an excellent athlete. But what he's being asked to do this season um, hasn't begun to come naturally to him yet. So now I want to go over to what Eberflus had to say, and I think that'll give us a little bit more context. So for anybody who didn't hear this interview yet, um, we can talk about how that relates to what Mazi was talking about and what other people are talking about when they talk about like not seeing Mazi execute the way that he needs to.
I think Mazi gets a lot of our attention, and can just talk about what you saw from him, how he's playing, and certainly Jay Toyer. Are they traditional one techniques, or how are you using those guys, and what do you get from Mazi?
Yeah, Mazi, we're still in the evaluation process with all those D tackles, and we're looking at those guys with a close eye. And it's important that they play the style that we, covet, and that's get off on the football and penetrate, play on the other side of the line of scrimmage, and then being able to shed blocks and make plays. But we are.
Okay, so I want to talk about this for a second because he said it's important that they play the style that we covet. So, in other words, even if Mazi does bring certain skills to the table, if it's not the set of skills that they're looking for specifically for this defense, it's not valuable to them. And so he talks about get off on the football, which is something that Mazi has shown the ability to do. But like as we've discussed, if you're not having to think so much about what you're doing, it's going to be easier to move that way. It's going to be easier to move with aggression and with a lot of velocity. When you have to do a little bit more thinking based on what you're expected to do now. So same situations, like situations he's seen before in most cases, but it's like even though it's the same situation, he's being asked to respond to it differently, right? So that's going to change the way that you process it. It's going to change the way that you think about it, which ultimately is going to change things like how you react. In other words, your get off and penetration and the way that you
attack front, and it's important that he does that right and does that well. This is his first time in the system, as a lot of guys. So we're all learning as we go through the process here of how to play that way. And he's doing a good job in the drills and all those things. But again, we just got to keep evaluating that process. And we're all in a competition right now. Nothing's set in stone. Competition for playing time, competition for the roster, and we want it that way. So guys are competing.
So he acknowledged that it's Mazi's first time playing in this system. So not only is it Mazi's first time playing in this system, but earlier when we listened to Mazi talk, we heard that he's had to adjust several times throughout his college career and professional career. So while he's used to adjusting, he's gotten comfortable with the process of having to adjust to what a new coordinator is asking of him. What that also means is that this is something that, even out of all those coordinators, this is something that he's never had to learn how to do. So he keeps having to learn and adjust and relearn his position. And now he's being asked to do it yet again. And he's being asked to do it in order to fit into a system that is asking him to be more responsive, more aggressive, and to react quickly. That's like that's like a really tough set of circumstances. So that's probably like reason number 5,678 that I'm like, yes, by all means, be honest about Mozzie's performance. But if we're going to be honest about Mozzie's performance, we also need to be honest about the factors that are affecting him. And that's not only how a lot of people have talked about his weight fluctuations, under the assumption that he's been asked by the team to lose and gain weight, but we also have to consider what they're asking him to do in terms of adjusting his instincts. Like a lineman, they have to be able to rely on their instincts at a certain point, and he's had to adjust and readjust and relearn his natural instincts over and over.
Does that suit his skills? What he because he's never done that before. Does that suit you know what he does best?
I do. I do think it does. I think his skill set, can do either. And I really think that he will be a good attack front guy.
All right, so let's be real. If if Eberflus didn't think that Mozzie's skill set could work in what he's being asked to do, would he say it at a press conference? No, he would not. So it's possible that Eberflus really does think this. It's also possible that Eberflus gave the most acceptable answer given the situation, right? Um, because if he did want to say anything that was close to being honest, he would have to find a creative way of saying it. He would have to find a way of saying it that did not criticize or judge the player. And you also got to think, we don't know what he's gotten a chance, because this press conference is from Monday. At the time that this press conference happened, we don't know what kind of conversation he had had the opportunity to have with Mazi, or what he may have told Mazi, like, hey, we're going to talk about this later in the week. Just like, you never know. So, I mean, the media asked the question, that's their job to do that. But to expect Matt Eberflus to give a 100% honest answer in that moment, in that situation, not realistic. Now, I do hope he's telling the truth. I do hope that Mazi really has shown signs of being able to adjust, because if he doesn't, then the Cowboys are in trouble. The Cowboys are in trouble. Um, but like I said, I need to see more. A lot of people need to see more. And I think for most reasonable people, that is where we are right now. I think most reasonable people are not team trade Mozzie. Like, shit like that is going to get a lot of views and get a lot of reactions, because that's what works, polarization. But the truth is, that's kind of an extreme reaction to what we've seen from Mazi Smith so far, considering the circumstances. Like, in order to have that stance, you have to have a little bit of a nuance with your takes. You have to consider several different factors. What's the word? Context. Like, nuance and context are essential with evaluating Mazi Smith right now. Um, but if you apply that, then you can find yourself in a position where you say, like, yo, that first preseason game, that wasn't it. Mazi Smith said it himself. He said he didn't do anything. He said he wasn't satisfied. He said he didn't like it. And Matt Eberflus, even he's like, yeah, we're still evaluating. We're still looking at guys. It's important that they play the style that we want them to play, which to me kind of felt like a way of saying, um, yeah, he needs to work on playing in the style that we're looking for, right? But all of that is 100% fair. I'm gonna let this press conference keep going for a little bit, because I just want to see if he says anything else that we need to listen to right after this.
Todd Archer with ESPN. Do you have a level of concern with your cornerback situation, given the health, not knowing when Diggs, Rebel, they'll play?
Yeah, I think that anybody would have a level of concern. You have guys that are starting, that are all pro players, Pro Bowl players.
Okay, so nothing about Mazi, but essentially what he's ends up saying there is like, yeah, anytime you're missing somebody who's of the caliber of Trayvon Diggs, that's an issue. Which not exactly a surprise. Um, let's see. Clement, I don't know if Clement is still here, but he said a couple of things in the chat earlier. He said, at least he took accountability for his play last week versus LA Rams last Saturday. But we need to see Mazi clogged up the middle and command double teams. Eberflus isn't helping him by telling him to get upfield instead of attacking the guard's inside shoulder as the one tech. Unfortunately, he is getting turned too much in preseason practices. Need him to not play high. Yeah, that sounds like it's been an issue with multiple guys, and on both sides of the ball too. Just the playing too high. And so hopefully they address that this week. I was expecting to see better in terms of that on Saturday because like that was already some criticism coming out of the joint practice was that everybody's playing too high. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that's a technique thing, that's a fundamentals thing. So essentially they should just need a reminder. But I kind of said that within the context of my own athletic experience, uh, in roller derby, playing too high was a constant issue. We also were tasked with the responsibility of getting low so that we could make the right hits. But a lot of times, all it took was a reminder, like, "Hey, get low," and we had visual cues that we used to know if we were low enough. But no, that continued to be an issue on Saturday. And it definitely continued to be an issue with Mazi Smith. Da, 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 da. So Clement said Eberflus isn't helping him by telling him to get up field instead of attacking the guard's inside shoulder as a one tech. Well, it sounds like Eberflus is looking for something specific. Um, and Clement, if you're still in chat, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Eberflus and his determination to implement an attack front and try to integrate Mazi into that system. Like within that context, what do you think? Like assuming that Mazi playing the way he played last season is just not an option. It doesn't fit an attack front, therefore he must learn to do something different. What are your thoughts on that? Because honestly, that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see more penetration. I wanted to see more of him firing vertically. Like there were a couple of slant plays where he was way too flat. He was more horizontal than I would have liked. Um, but that's one of those things. And even the first time I saw it, I was like, well, I can't tell if he's executing this wrong or if there's just some sort of miscommunication and this like everybody was wrong. You know what I'm saying? Because there were a couple of other people on the line that it was just like, okay, are they supposed to have that delayed reaction? What exactly is happening here? But since I was watching Mazi, I was just looking at his trajectory in relationship to the trajectory of the guys around him. And that's what looked like it was a bit off, you know? Um, Chris said, you should do a breakdown of your roller derby games. I want to see you in action. Well, Chris, I don't skate anymore. So there's that. And I was an okay skater. I was a better coach than I was a skater. I was a better coach and trainer than I was a skater. Um, my ability to coach others helped me be a better skater. It helped me be a good enough skater to find a spot on some good teams. So let me think of how I can explain how roller derby worked in terms of tiers. So imagine, okay, so you got the Dallas Cowboys, right? This is how roller derby works in terms of teams. So imagine if the 53-man roster is like something that we call an A team, and the practice squad is something that we call a B team, and that B team also goes and plays games against other people's B teams. And depending on how many people you have, you might have a C team, which would be people who don't even make the practice squad, but there are enough of them to make a team, right? So you have levels within each derby organization. And so when I first started skating, I couldn't even make a C team, a C or D team. I was trash. I was garbage. Um, but what I learned quickly was that a lot of the women who were teaching other people how to skate, they did not know how to teach people to be athletes. And I started playing roller derby at a point when there was like a real transition in the sport. So you might see like some old clips from the 80s where it was almost like WWE style. And then immediately after that, like, so derby, there was a drop off. And then when it came back, it was kind of still that style, like very fast paced, hard hits, people flying all over the place. But then what happened over time is people started skating for so long that they got very agile. They could learn how to control their movement. Um, and the rules started to change accordingly. So I started playing roller derby at this very critical point where it was still part entertainment and hard hits, but also we need you to be athletic and agile on your skates and be able to like turn around and skate backwards and jump and do all this stuff, right? And so what was tough for me was that like I needed a certain type of training. Ended up skating a lot by myself, and I went from not being able to make a team to being like captain of a B team. And then eventually I was able to skate on one of the top A teams in the world, but I wasn't like a starter. That's kind of where I got. But what was interesting was that when I would skate and like sometimes defenders would come for me, right? And I was a lot of times the smallest person on the track, especially when I started playing open gender games. And open gender is exactly what it sounds like. It means it doesn't matter what gender you are. So I skated with men, I skated with non-binary people, I skated with trans men, trans women, whatever. But I'm 5'4", and usually I was somewhere between 145 and 155 pounds. I was one of the smallest people on the track. I was not the fastest. I did not hit the hardest, um, but I was very good at communicating. I was very good at seeing the track and being able to keep my team coordinated. And so I there were games where I literally would hear defenders from the opposing team, and they'd be like, take her out. If we take her out, they won't know what to do. And so, even though I wasn't the best skater on the track, the fact that I made the rest of my team so efficient made defenses hate me, and they would fly at my ass. I hated it because I was already the smallest person. So if somebody was playing offense on me, it could be one other person. Chances are they were bigger than me and stronger than me. So I was already having a hard time. But then they'd be like, nah, we need like two or three other bitches to go get her the fuck off the track. And I'm just like, fuck. I still have a scar. I have a scar on my right shoulder blade from Nationals 2023. Um, I was so proud of us. I had started my own team and took us all the way to Nationals. We ended up getting third place, but we skated on this rink that was a wooden floor. So for Nationals, they got a fresh wax, right? And so this was a rule set that does not allow you to stop. There's different rule sets in Derby. So this is a rule set that did not allow you to stop. I'm on the track, we're skating. Someone hits me, and because the wax on the floor is fresh, it allows us to go in the direction of the track really fast. But if you were to go perpendicular to the track, your wheel might get stuck, right? So someone hits me, I can't slide into my stop the way that I normally do. So they basically knock me down, I roll over and then slide, and my shoulder hit the ground, right? Now, what was funny is that shit hurt like a bitch. And I asked my teammates, I was like, is it bad? They're like, nah, you're okay. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we play the game, we go to the hotel, we go to take showers. And I had put on a shirt after the game. I go to take my shirt off and it's stuck to this spot where my shoulder hit the ground. And so I had to like wet the shirt and peel it off. And then I realized there's a spot about this big. So like half the size of my cheek that's this big where my skin is gone. And I'm like, what the fuck? Y'all said it wasn't that bad. And they were like, well, it wasn't like dripping blood or anything. And I was just like, see, next time I'm gonna just go to the bathroom and lick him myself. Anyway, good times, good times. Chris asked if I was a QB. Yes, I was a QB in a lot of ways, in the sense that, yeah, I was calling plays and I was telling them what to do, and hoping to God that nobody hit me. Oh, but I got hit a lot. They love to hit me. And then plus sometimes I won't say I played dirty, but I didn't bend the rules. I just used the rules in ways that other people wouldn't. But like I said, I was one of the smallest people on the track. So I like basically I was willing to go to the penalty box if I could do something that helped my team. I was just like, whatever, you know. And I didn't like hurt other people. It was things like you're not allowed to, for example, hold on to somebody with your hand or hold their jersey or like push them backwards, right? And so if I saw that my jammer was about to get lead, but like let's say our blockers had gotten split up and I was at the front, I'm the last line of defense. I'm like, I might get a backwards block penalty or, a forearm penalty if it meant my jammer could get lead. And I'm like, all right, I'll do my time in the penalty box. I'll go sit my ass down. I'll come back. I. So that's what the rule said. It doesn't say that you can't block backwards. It says that if you do block backwards and a referee sees you and they blow the whistle and they call your number and your color, then you go to the penalty box. And so if I backwards blocked somebody and that happened, I went to the penalty box. It's fine. All right. So where were we? If y'all have any other questions or comments about Mazi, feel free to throw them in the chat and we can talk about it. But I do want to talk about Shedeur Sanders a little bit. I don't have any video associated with it. Um, but essentially, what happened with Shedeur Sanders is that he suffered an oblique strain. So hopefully everybody knows what obliques are. It's like, you got your abs that are on the front, your obliques are on the side of your abdominals. Um, and he's a quarterback. And a lot of times when a quarterback ends up with an oblique strain, it's because of repeated throwing motion, because of how your obliques work with rotation of the torso. Anyway, that was something that was reported this morning, and all they know is that it's day by day. And I don't know how long it should take him to recover, because in all the reports that I read, there was no mention of like how bad it was. So an oblique strain could mean anything from, okay, there's a stretching of the muscle and muscle soreness, or it could mean torn muscle. And obviously, how bad it is will determine how long it'll take him to recover. All they're saying is that it's day by day. But here's the thing that is rough about that. Um, Shedeur Sanders, even after the preseason game that impressed everybody and had all the celebs across the world celebrating, he was still fourth in the depth chart. There was no mention of him getting reps with the ones. It seemed like he was set to get more reps than he had been getting, but reps with the ones, no, that was not something that was on the table. Um, and so now with him not getting any reps or snaps at all from it for an indeterminate amount of time, we don't know what that's going to do with his trajectory, because Shedeur Sanders was really counting on this time period to be able to prove himself to the coaches. Because you got to think, after the preseason game that he had, they still didn't want him to get reps with the one, so he had a lot to prove. He needed to show up to practice, and put everything that he could into practice and put some good things on tape, make some good impressions. He needed to play in this next preseason game. Even though they said he probably wouldn't start, all indications were that he would get some snaps. And that's something that he definitely needed. Because for whatever reason, the Browns organization just seems dead set on not acknowledging what he brought to the table in that preseason game, saying, oh, he's still learning, oh, yada, yada, yada. Um, and so if they already felt that way, it was already an uphill battle for Shedeur Sanders. It just seems like he's going to have even more to prove. And this can definitely be used as an excuse slash reason, whatever you want to call it, to not put him any higher in the depth chart. So I'm still going to be watching the Browns this weekend because, I want to see what the other QBs bring to the table so that when we say Shedeur deserves to be higher in the depth chart, it's not just based on what we saw from him. We can compare what we saw from him to what we see from the other quarterbacks that they have in the building. But I really do hate this for him. I hate the fact that, he was just getting over one obstacle in terms of public perception, in terms of assumptions about what he was capable of as a quarterback. He he was just getting past that, and now he's having to deal with this particular setback, and I hate that for him. I really wanted him to be able to ride this wave into, if not starting by week one, getting meaningful reps at some point during the season. So I'm still gonna be following his story. I'm still gonna be watching and seeing what happens. But I definitely hate that for him. Clement says, "Jazz, you have to be physical. Roller derby is a fast physical sport." Yeah. And I was in a lot of sentences, but so I did not often task myself with doing a lot of the actual hitting. Um, I tried to do a lot of the communication or tried to set myself up for one-on-one blocking situations or supporting my other teammates in a situation called bracing. Because while I didn't have the most acceleration that to compensate for my lack of mass going into the hits, right? But I'm very strong for my size, if it's okay to brag on myself. And so sometimes, for example, let's say two of my teammates were trying to block a jammer, and it's illegal to block backwards. So if a jammer is behind me, I can't stop and push myself backwards so that we go in the opposite direction. I keep them from going that way. I have to slow myself down so that when they approach me, they can't go forward, but I can't actively push them backwards. So what that creates is a situation where sometimes it's hard to find stability so that you can actually go at a slow enough space without rolling forward and also not pushing yourself actively backwards. And so you have someone called a brace who would basically come around in front of those skaters and hold them up so that they could maintain stability, which is really fun because like if you count like if I'm bracing two teammates and let's say they're 180. Like I said, everybody's bigger than me. Sometimes it was just like 500 pounds, like between them two and the jammer, it was like 500 pounds worth of people that I'm like slowing down with my hands and by keeping a proper stance. Um, that was pretty dope. I do miss Derby sometimes. Not the drama though. All right. Any questions about the Shedeur situation? That was like a very quick rundown of what's going on with him or about anything else. Like if y'all have any questions about any of the other headlines, I'm gonna say I'm not film chick. So don't ask me about like a bunch of like stuff on film and preseason performances that I haven't talked about yet. Um, as a matter of fact, I still owe Stargazer some film. If you follow me on Twitter, you probably saw the conversation between me and her where I said what I said about Mazi, and she was like, "Nah, because da da da." And so we were talking in the back channels and trying to get on the same page about it. And like she sent me some clips, but like they were small and blurry. I think because she has an iPhone and I have an Android. And I was just like, "All right, later today, I'm gonna send you the time and down and distance so you'll see the plays that I'm talking about." And I never did it. I'd be so busy. The day that I told her that, I was so sure I would have time. I was so sure, but I ended up working all day and I never got around to it. I've still got content backlogged that I need to share with y'all. And so like that's why I've been putting out so much stuff because like I've got stuff that I need to get to that I'm like, okay, this and this needs to come out before the regular season starts. And I'm trying to get it done, but I'm also still working full time and I also have like a bunch of other stuff on my plate, contract work that I need to do. And yeah, so if Stargazer ends up watching this, I'm pretty sure she won't. But I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Chris said, "Do they ever fight out there?" In Derby, sometimes. On the track, it doesn't happen as much. Um, like you might see two skaters get into each other's faces, but there's not a lot of fighting in flat track derby. And in bank track derby, a lot of the fights are staged. Um, but off the track, derby be messy. Them bitches is petty. Um, I can't say that I ever saw an actual fight though. I've seen some dirty hits. I've definitely seen some dirty hits. Um, and I've seen people just be petty and talk a lot of shit, but not a lot of actual fights. Not a lot of actual fights. Any other questions about the Dallas Cowboys or roller derby or Shedeur Sanders or anyone else I owe film to? There's no one else. Um, but no, I really am actually glad that Stargazer challenged me to show her in the film because like when I said what I said about Mazi, like I say all the time, I never know which of my tweets are actually gonna take off and who's gonna actually care what I have to say. So there are so many times that I say shit and nobody responds or says anything. And this happened to be one time that somebody responded and she was like, "Yeah, I need you to show me what you're talking about." But it was actually good though, because I've gotten so out of the habit of like taking actual notes. And what I said about Mazi was like basically based off memory of watching the game once and then going back and watching certain spots like a second time. But at the time when she replied to my tweet, I hadn't even watched the all 22. I couldn't find it. I found out that they put it in another place than where it was last season, but I hadn't even watched the all 22. And so I was like, okay, this is actually good that I need to get back in the habit of doing this because as busy as I am, I don't see that slowing down. So I need to find a way to fit this in my schedule. I need to find a way to be efficient at this so that when regular season does come around and I really want to start presenting an opinion on different players and different plays, I can have like legitimate references instead of just saying shit and people are like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, and I don't have anything to show them. Chris says, "I want to go to a derby event now." I'm not sure where you live, Chris, but wherever you live, they probably have events. Now, the quality of the event will depend on where you live though, because there are some places that have derby organizations, but like especially if it's a small club, they might not have access to the level of training that would make them as good as a team out of like I think these days the best teams are like Portland and New York, right? So there's levels. Houston, I don't even know if they have derby in Houston right now. So they did for a while. And here's the thing, and I'm trying not to be too critical because this episode isn't supposed to be about roller derby, but um for whatever reason, and I have my theories about why, but for whatever reason, people in the derby community don't like actually making money. And one of the things that happened to the Houston roller derby team was they lost their practice space and it was hard for them to find another place to practice. So they used to have a really good team, actually. But last time I checked, everything kind of fell apart in Houston, and I don't know what's going on with them now. Um, so yeah. Um, when it comes to this season in terms of film, um, I don't I don't see myself doing anything in terms of like actually showing you guys film. Or if I do, it might be like a play here and there. But here's my thing that I like to remind people of. A lot of times the people that are doing film, they're people who have been watching the game for a long time. I feel like all the major Cowboys content creators have been doing this longer than I have. I can't think of anybody who's like newer than me. Like AOC, I know is new on the scene. I don't know how long he's actually been like watching football or talking about football, and I don't think he does a lot of actual film anyway. Um, but like when I first started my podcast, it was just to talk about fan perspectives. It was me and my homegirl. Anybody who was watching back in 2021, you remember Spain. Um, and we were just watching for fun. She had never watched American football before. So she definitely didn't know how to break it down or analyze it. And I just didn't at the time. I just had fun watching the game and, we talked about the headlines, whatever. Um, and it wasn't until I was over a year into the podcast that I decided to start writing that I even started to learn to watch the game in that way because I wanted to start writing. And at the time when I decided to start writing, I uh it was around the same time that Cooper Rush had starting a lot of games because Dak was injured. And I was getting on with Inside the Star, and I wasn't sure what to write about at the time, but someone was like, "Oh, if you're going to be writing about the Cowboys, you should go to these Twitter spaces." And it was Nix's, your guy Nix on Twitter. It was his Twitter spaces. They were like, "You should go to his Twitter spaces and hear what they have to say. They say some good stuff in there." So I'm like, "Okay." And so I go in there and I'm listening, and they're not like fans who are emotional and ranting and just like, popping off with whatever they heard on ESPN. They are literally coming with facts and not just like box score stats. They're like, analyzing the game. They're talking about different players at different positions, what they should be doing, different plays, the backgrounds of the coordinators, all of that. And one of the things that they did talk a lot about was why fans who thought that Cooper Rush should be the new starter in place of Dak were being ridiculous. And like listening to them talk about football, that's what actually made me start looking at the game differently. So basically, the only reason I even became interested in X's and O's like this is because I became a Cowboys fan. Now, before that, I knew different things like, I knew what the different positions were and what they were supposed to do. Like somebody sent me a video the other day of this Instagram account where it's like this woman explaining football for girls. Um, and she's got her whiteboard and she's like, "Today we're gonna talk about what the pocket is." And she's like breaking down the pocket. And the person who sent it to me, they were like, "See, this is how I need football broken down for me." And I was like, "Oh, this is good information," because I did not realize that people didn't know this. I did not realize that there were women who wanted to watch football and didn't know this. Because to me at the time, those were the easiest things to pick up. What a quarterback is, what a receiver is, what a running back is, what the pocket is. Like I'm like, okay, that's simple. Um, so that stuff I knew, but a lot of intricacies in terms of what makes a quarterback a good quarterback besides can they win? Can they throw the ball far? Da, da, da. Like, what are you looking for in terms of specific characteristics at each position? Um, what was it that made Dak Prescott a good quarterback, even if the team, hadn't gotten a Super Bowl, so on and so forth. Those were the kinds of things that I didn't know yet. Once again, nuance, context. And the first article that I ended up writing, which was trash, by the way, it was shitty. Don't go look for it. It was terrible. But it ended up being about why Cowboys fans who thought that Cooper Rush should be the starter in place of Dak were ridiculous. But a lot of it was based on things that I heard in that space, which then led me to go and research certain things for myself just to verify. Because, for all I know, these people could have been crazy. But then, I start digging and I find different resources and references to support what they were saying. And I'm just like, oh shit, completely changed the way I started approaching the game. But anyway, I say that to say, I've been doing this podcast for like 4 years and a month at this point, which means I only started looking at X's and O's like less than 3 years ago. So that's why when it comes to shit like breaking down film, I'm just like, yo, I'm still learning myself. Like, and then there was the fact that like the terminology, I had the hardest time with the terminology because there were certain things that people would say in football terms that didn't match with words that I use in personal trainer terms, like mobility. So, like, as a personal trainer, the word mobility means like the ability to move your body, to like have core rotation, to be able to move your joints and shit, right? So, I would look at a quarterback, and if they had good footwork, to me they were mobile because they could move their hips, they could move their feet. They usually, like, if they had a good throwing motion, then they were mobile. They had mobility from a personal trainer's perspective. But when they said mobility, they meant like running out the pocket and shit. And so I would be talking about mobile quarterbacks, and I was talking about something completely different than what they were talking about. Um, like what they were when they talked about mobility, that's what I called agility, right? And I'm trying to think if there was anything else where that applied, because I know there were a couple of things that I was just at some point I realized I was like using the wrong words. So even like learning, like first I had to learn how to see the game in a certain way, but then I had to learn, I'm still learning how to speak about the game in a certain way. And so that is also tough. It's kind of like learning a new language, honestly. So it'd be like, if I were to go to a different country, and let's say they drive on the side of the road, I might be able to figure out how to drive there if they're driving on like a different way and have different traffic rules, but I might not be able to give directions because I don't know how to communicate it. And so that's like my biggest issue right now, is that I can see certain things, but describing what I see is hard as fuck. If you want me to describe it in a way that matches what most people say. And I'm trying to think of some of the other words that people are using that just didn't match my terminology. Um but yeah, that was probably one of the most confusing things at first. Good times. Clement says you can talk about the Netflix Cowboys doc. Oh, I intend to. I intend to. As a matter of fact, I don't know if y'all saw this story, but apparently in the doc, Jerry Jones talks about beating cancer. So if you hadn't heard, in the documentary or in the docu-series, Jerry Jones makes reference to beating cancer or undergoing cancer treatments or something like that. And someone from the Dallas Morning News ended up asking him for details on that after the premiere event. And he said that, like, yeah, apparently, like, somewhere like 10 or 12 years ago or something, he had stage 4 cancer. And they used an experimental cancer treatment that ended up getting rid of all his tumors. So this man like beat cancer, like beat stage 4 cancer. Um, and so that was just crazy to hear because I never knew that was the case. It makes sense when you think about just how Jerry Jones has looked over the years. There definitely was a time period where it seemed like something might be up health wise. Um, but he told that story, and so then today during Coach Schottenheimer's press conference, they ended up asking him about his battle with thyroid cancer. And one thing that was interesting about that conversation that I didn't know before was that apparently, um, when Coach Schottenheimer found out that he had cancer, he went and told his dad, Marty Schottenheimer. And Marty Schottenheimer ended up calling Dan Snyder, who himself had apparently had thyroid cancer at some point. And according to Brian Schottenheimer, his dad called Dan Snyder. Dan Snyder said, Marty, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to call you right back. And within 24 to 36 hours, they were operating on Brian Schottenheimer and they removed 17 tumors in his thyroid. Um, and it's interesting to think about. I mean, one, praise God that Brian Schottenheimer is still with us. And he actually attributed that situation to one of the reasons that he became so much stronger in his faith. But it was also interesting to me that Dan Snyder was involved in that story, because sometimes when people talk about Dan Snyder, they talk about the version of Dan Snyder that made headlines for saying some, racist and, just awful things via email, which resulted in him losing his team, so on and so forth, right? Um, but it's just interesting to think about the fact that the same man who got so much criticism and who's just like basically labeled as just like a generally not good dude these days, basically saved Brian Schottenheimer's life. That's just like so wild when you think about it. Just the nuance of people, the duality of people. Because like if you were to tell those stories without names attached, you wouldn't automatically assume that that's the same person. But it's just interesting to think about. And not saying that that excuses anything that Dan Snyder did, but it's just interesting to think about how somebody could do something that bothers so many people, that offends so many people, that hurts so many people. But it's like, yo, there's more to this person than that. This person does have compassion. They do help people out from time to time. It's interesting. But yeah, no, I'm definitely going to talk about the Cowboys documentary whenever it comes out. There's a few things that I want to talk about. So, the Chiefs documentary, if anything is interesting in there, I'm going to talk about it. The Cowboys documentary, going to talk about it. And then there is a sports horror movie coming out called Him that I cannot wait to see. And at some point, I might do like a live reaction to the trailer, but it's supposed to come out in September, I believe. But I'm so excited about that. I'm so excited about that. So yeah, it's a few things coming up, and then I'm gonna work on my film and whatnot. So yeah, it'll be a fun season. It'll be a good season. I'm increasing my output in terms of content. I'm staying consistent, and I think the Cowboys are gonna have a good year. And it's also going to be a great time period to talk about some of the other sports and other athletes that I'm interested in. So I'm excited about the direction that all this might go. But anyway, we've been here for over an hour. When I started, I said I was tired, and now I'm even more tired. So it's time for me to go. Clement and Chris, I appreciate y'all for participating in the chat and for keeping me company tonight. But I'm gonna go ahead and get off of here. So I'll see y'all. I'm posting every day, so definitely check my channel every day. Also, before I go, YouTube has informed me that almost 70% of the people who watch my content are not subscribers. So if you see this and you are one of those people, I need you to hit that little button with the bell on it, like right now. Before, like, don't do nothing else because you're going to forget. Don't say you're going to come back to it. If you're not looking at the screen, pause this shit right now. Make sure when you come back to your phone, you hit that little button with the bell on it. I need you to subscribe. That'll really help me out. So subscribe, like, share, make sure your notifications are turned on because I'm posting shorts and videos damn near every day, and they're good. I posted a really fun one earlier today from where I talked to Osa about which anime hero he most identified with. That was a fun conversation. So check that out. Check out the content I put out tomorrow. And next time, Adam, I don't know what you're asking me. I don't. Drake is a Kamzat. Anyway, whatever. I need to stop reading the chat. Not everything needs to be read out loud. But yeah, that's it for tonight. Next time I'll be live will probably be on Tuesday because I have a speaking engagement this weekend, so I won't be going live after any of these games. I'll probably be on the road on Saturday. But that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. I appreciate y'all. I hope y'all have a good night. This has been another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm Jazz Monet, and I'm out.
You only think of us as a bitches when you intimidated. Put it that way. I think
people look at a woman and she's an aggressive woman who's out to get what she wants to get. You know what I'm saying? Ambitious, and they want to say, when a male is assertive, this is what he wants. He's looked at as a strong male, but yet when I get it, I'm a bitch. Exactly. And if that's what I gotta be, exactly, to get what I want and to make it somewhere, then I'll just be that.